Welcome to Midweek Talks today, where we help you follow Jesus in the middle of cultural, personal, and challenging issues. We're honored that you're here today. Make sure that you share this. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Facebook. Today, we've got a special guest with us, and we're honored to have Pastor Elizabeth Swyford here with us today. Elizabeth, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I was talking with Elizabeth a few days ago, and after I heard some of her story, I said, Elizabeth needs to come and be with us. And so I want you to sit back, and you're going to want to share this. I want you to sit back and hear a lifetime of the involvement of God in somebody's life and how God interrupts our life and turns us around and does what He does with us. So sit back and get ready, because at the end of this program, we believe that your life has the potential to be changed through this story that you're going to hear today. Now, Elizabeth, when we were talking the other day, you took us way back to the time you were a teenager. And what I want to do is, those that are watching today, I kind of just want to sit back. And I want to listen, because you started when you were a teenager. And can you just take us back there? You've lived in Newton all of your life, right?
All my life, yes.
Take us back there. Tell us what life was like. And help us understand life from your perspective.
Well, I thank and praise God that God have had a way in my life that was very unusual. Back when I was a teenager, I just thought life, all I wanted to just grow up and be a wife. I wanted to be a mother and, live life and just, be happy, have my children and just be happy. But it didn't quite happen the way I thought it would. Being a teenager, I was raised by two alcoholic parents. My mother was an alcoholic and my father was an alcoholic. And in the midst of all that, God, He took me through it. He blessed me where I was able to learn quicker than what I probably should have learned in life, how to provide for myself. I would get up, and sometimes I had to prepare food for myself even at the age of 9. Even at the age of 9. And just had to go through a lot of stuff that you would think would probably be unnecessary, but because of the alcoholic parents that I had, and they were going through, my mother was going through her ordeal and my father was dealing with his ordeal. My father was a veteran from the World War II, and he was, it wasn't mentioned in those times, but he had probably had PTSD and dealing with what he had to go through. My mother was dealing with what my father was putting her through, and it was just, my world was just really wheeling and it kind of turned upside down.
Let me ask you for a minute, as a 9-year-old girl, I'm going back there and I'm trying to imagine, and those of you who are watching, you may have been through some difficult things in your life. What's it like for a 9-year-old girl emotionally to be living in that kind of atmosphere? Well,
a 9-year-old girl living in the atmosphere that I came up with, you didn't think about it. If I thought about it, there was time I would get to myself and say, oh, yes, I wished my life was different, but it was so much happening in your life, you didn't think about it. But all I knew was that God was really taking care of me, because there was time when I would go out and play in my yard. We didn't have the grass in the yard. We just had the yard dirt. And I would go out and play, and then I just lay down and look up to God and talk to my Heavenly Father, and just, just would dream of things that, I would want the Lord to do for me, and how I would want things better for me, and how I would want things better for my parents. But you just really living day by day, you didn't have time to think. You just did what you had to do to survive. You had to survive, and that's what I did. 9 years old, I was cooking, washing clothes, and you just didn't have time to really think. You just had to survive.
So if there's not really, there couldn't have been a lot of parental oversight then, right?
Not really.
So how does that impact you as a little girl growing up? You're 9, you're 10, you're 11, you're 12, you turn to be a teenager.
Right.
Who oversees the friends you hang out with? How does that happen? And
Yes. Well, now I come from a family of 11.
11 in your family.
11 was in my family.
Wow.
And I am the youngest one. And so my mother, when my mother and my father would leave, they would leave the oldest one over us. And they are the one that overseen who would come to the house and what chores you had to have done and what mom and daddy, the rules that they left. They were the ones to oversee that. And I thank and praise God for my older sister. She's like a mom to me today, and my older brothers. They still to this day always checking on me or on someone in the family to oversee what we have. The things that we need is sufficient. They do that today. And if the Lord's will, I'll be turning 60-year-old in a couple of weeks. And my brothers and sisters that is alive, they still do that as of today.
Yeah. So you got married pretty early, is that right?
I did.
Talk to us about that.
Well, like I said, feeling not loved like I really needed the love, looking for love in all the wrong places. The old saying is true. I was about 15, 16, and I met my husband, and he told me one day he loved me. I believed it, and it wasn't long after that we got married, because I was really looking desperately for love. And being a young teenager, you got to really, if I known what I know now, you really got to be careful. You need to be careful, because you can get in a situation that will carry you years down the road of regrets. So 15 years old, 16, fell in love with my husband, got married when I was 17, and start having my children. And this is what I said I wanted, but still I didn't realize I was so young. At the age of 17-year-old, I bought a house. I bought a house, I bought a car. At the age of 17, trying to live a grown-up life. Had the knowledge, because God really gave it to me, because of the time that I was 9, what I had to do to survive. And when I was 17, I had the knowledge to own a house, to own a car. So I had to grow up pretty fast.
So you bought the house, or your husband did?
I bought the house.
You bought the house.
I bought the house.
So I guess my question would be, how did that happen? Were you actually supporting the family?
I was supporting supporting me. My father, when I was 12, my father got hit by a car and got killed. My mother was an alcoholic. She couldn't take care of us the way she needed to. She wanted to, but her addiction was overwhelming for her. So that's why I had to do what I had to do at 17. About 17. I had to do what I had to do, buying the house and buying the car. And then my husband, I met him. I don't know if he loved me for what I had, but he told me he loved me. I married him, brought him into my house, and then my life really, really totally changed.
What changed? Talk to us.
Well, what changed was I didn't really get a chance to know my husband. I did not get the chance. That's why I say you got to be very careful and take life one day at a time. I didn't get a chance to know the person that I married. And when I did marry him and we cohabitated together, I found out that he had an addiction.
Okay.
And so here I'm saying, Lord, I grew up with a family that both had an addiction, and then now I'm married and I got a husband that have an addiction. I'm like, Lord, where is my break? Where is my break? But I do know that the Lord really had me in his hands all along. My husband had an addiction, and so he thought that he can get out of his addiction. He went on into the Army. And I waited on him for about, I say, 3 years.
Did you have children during that time?
Yes.
Yep.
In the midst of all that, we had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls.
So you're actually, while he's away, you're a single mom.
I'm a single mom.
Okay.
A young single mom.
Yeah.
And trying to keep it together for him until he got back home. So when he did get back home, we got back together. He had a home to come to, and but still he come to find out when he got home he still had his addiction, and I think it was a little worse because he had added some things.
Okay.
He added some things to his addiction, which made life a little more complicated. Yeah.
And so now you're growing up in another home. Not growing up, you're overseeing a home now that has another addiction in it. You've got 4 young kids.
4 young kids.
And you're feeling like this isn't what I signed up for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so what happens then? Where does your mind go? Where does your heart go at that point?
Well, I was so distraught. My husband, he didn't actually treated me like he really loved me because, like I say, we were so young, and he wanted to experience life outside the home. And I'm like trying to hold on, show every aspect that I love this man, and I want to have this great family that, I've always dreamed about having, but that is not where his heart was. And I was getting to the point where I was like so depressed. I was so depressed. And I thought, I said, and the devil talked to me one day, said, if you take your car, drive it off a cliff, maybe he'll pay you some attention if you get hurt, See, now the devil has a way to trick our heart and our mind.
Sure. Because
he knows God has a plan and a future for us. And so I said, thinking in my mind, what I did, I went to a club one night. I went to a club, and I sat in the club drinking my alcohol myself. And the devil said, now you take the car, and when you drive it down the hill that you're going, take it and you jump out the car and just let the car roll on down the hill. Now the devil knew I could have gotten killed, severely hurt.
You know what's interesting about that? I can hear somebody saying, the devil didn't say anything to you. But yet we know, don't we, that a lot of the thoughts that people are having, even in our culture today, as we kind of look around the country right now, and some real serious things are happening, we could understand that might not just be coming out of their mind, it might be coming out of somebody else's mind, which is the mind of the devil.
Exactly.
And you're saying that you're thinking these thoughts, that if I can just get attention,
right,
then maybe he'll love me.
Exactly.
There's a lot of people that think that way.
They do. Maybe if I do this, maybe if I overdose on this, maybe if I drink this, maybe if I take my car and run it up the road 100 miles or whatever the devil will tell us to do, because I know it was not the Lord telling me that.
And people are really looking for something. What you were looking for was the Lord, but you didn't know it.
Did not know it.
And there was this desire within you. to be loved, to have somebody pay attention to you, which the Lord provides for us. But if we don't know that, then the only thing we know to do is all that we know to do.
That's right.
So you're sitting in this club, this bar.
I'm sitting in this club, in the club yesterday, and I'm drinking, and the devil steady talking to me. And I said, okay, well, that's what I have to do to get attention, because you understand, I grew up with 2 alcoholic parents. Wasn't a lot of love in that situation. Just needing love. That's all I needed was love and attention and affection. And so I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this car and I'm going to drive it off the cliff and I'm going to jump out. And the devil said, you can jump out and be safe. But I didn't know what if I was going to be safe or not, you know. And so I'm thinking, I said, well, before I do that, and I thank God that there is a before I do that. Yeah. Before I do that, I'm going to stop by and see my classmate, a friend of mine, her children. She had just had 2 boys. And I wanted to see them, you know, just back in the days, you know, when your friends would have their children, you wanted to visit them, maybe give them a gift for their new birth or whatever. And I said, I'm going by and I'm going to stop by and see her children. She just had a child.
When you were at the bar, did you hear a voice?
I did hear a voice. I did hear a voice. Now, this was another voice.
Yeah, not the voice of the devil.
Not the voice of the devil. This voice spoke to me as I was drinking and said, you know, the voice said, you don't belong here. And I'm thinking, okay, whoa, am I drinking enough or what? You know, the voice spoke to me and said, you don't belong here. And I'm saying, like, I think I had enough. It's time to go. Now, the voice told me before, take the car and drive it off a cliff and jump out. You're going to be safe, and that's going to get his attention. Okay, when I went to the club, another voice says, no, you don't belong here. So I'm on my way to visit my school classmate, and I stopped by her mother. She was living with her mother she was living close to her mother at that time. And I knock on the door, ring the doorbell, and her mother was sitting there in the kitchen. And when she came to the door, she said, come right on in. Just invited me so nicely. And when I came on in, she had her Bible wide open. And she dropped a word in my heart that night. She imparted a word from the Lord in my life that night. And then she turned around and invited me to the church. She said, we're having a revival, and I want you to come.
How old are you right now? About 20 years old, are you?
I'm probably about 20.
Okay.
Yeah. And I says, okay, I'll come. Because, you know, what else do I have to lose? I'm getting ready to, you know, take and drive the car off the cliff, and I'm not a happy person. I'm depressed. Right. And, you know, and I'm just looking for love. Maybe I can get some love or something out of, you know, going to church that night. And so that next night, I went to the church. And I'm telling you, Pastor Mark, when I went to the church that night, my life has never been the same. My life has never been. What happened that night? That night, the preacher, they had service. And I was always afraid, kind of like jittery of church, you know, and that in itself was the enemy, the devil himself. Right. Don't be afraid of church. Yeah. Because the devil do know that when you do come to church, there might be a change that will come in your life that you never experienced before. That's right. And I want you to know, when I went to church that night, still jittery, and when the preacher stood up and made the altar call, I got up and threw my little hands up, my finger, and was headed towards the door. And the preacher said, no, you come. I turned around and went to the altar. And when I fell on my knees, the Lord, oh, glory be to God, God introduced himself to me that night. and my life has never been the same. And I'm thanking God, and I do thank the Lord that my life changed that very night.
What was that experience that you had?
The Lord came into my life that night, and the older mothers, now back then they would get down with you on their knees.
Oh, sure.
And yes, they did. And
There's
would
an old term we used to call pray through.
Pray through.
Yeah.
Until you get to where you're going.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the older mothers got on their knees with me that night and told me what to say. And they said, ask God to come into your life. And I did. And I meant that with all my heart. I say, Lord, come into my life and make a change in my life. Because I needed a change. I needed a change. I was depressed. I was so wounded. I was needing so much love.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the love of God came into my heart that night. And God took me up in a whirlwind. And just, you know, I've never read the Bible at that time. That particular time, I wasn't a Bible reader.
Yeah.
Did not know that Jesus was on the right-hand side of God. It was in the Word.
Yeah.
And the Lord spoke to me when he took me up in that whirlwind, and he said to me, he said, I have saved you, and I have sanctified you. I baptized you in the Holy Ghost. He said, now you go in peace and believe. And I'm telling you, Pastor Mark, I believe everything that the Lord told me. And then I felt my inner being. I guess that's what you would say. I felt myself just coming down.
Yeah.
I came down into myself, and I'm like, the only way I can explain it, it was like an outer body experience, really. And it's just, it's so unexplainable, I'm telling you.
You know, Pastor Elizabeth, that's called an encounter with Jesus.
Absolutely.
And with everything that we have today in our culture to help people, as good as those things are, the thing that you needed was a supernatural encounter.
Yeah, absolutely.
You needed something that would radically change your life.
I did.
That didn't take years.
Absolutely.
It was like a 180 turn, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And I remember you saying something that, were you like one of the last ones to leave church that night?
I was. And the Lord just blessed me so tremendously. And when I came to myself, I know they sing the song, my hand looked new, my feet do too. But truly in my heart, I'm telling you the honest truth, it was like someone finally turned on the light. Someone turned on the light. My thinking was unclogged. My heart, it was beating just right. I just felt loved. I felt loved. I thought more clearer. Things began to change. Even I could deal with my husband addiction even more. I could deal with that. And God, down through the years of time, worked everything out for me.
So you have this radical encounter with Jesus, but then you got to go home.
I had to go home.
Because sometimes it's easy for people to have something happen at church, but that's got to translate from church to home to work.
Right.
So what happens? You go home, and how now are you thinking, and what is your husband saying, and what happens?
Well, when I got home, he don't know. He doesn't know that I'm a changed person.
Yeah.
And back in the days, this was like in the 70s and the 80s. Well, the young people, they were smoking weed.
Sure.
And I was a weed smoker. And not a whole lot more than he did, but he would pull out a joint. Yeah. He said, hey, honey, come on, let's go ahead and smoke. I said, no, I don't want none of that.
Nobody told you not to do that, right?
Nobody told me not to.
Nobody told you?
No.
The Lord did?
The Lord did. And I said, no, I don't want. And the Lord gave me more understanding. I have children to raise, to rear up. I have children that needs me. Because I thought, I look back, my father was an alcoholic. And I knew, Pastor Mark, then I didn't want to be that parent.
Yeah.
I want it different for
Yeah.
my children. And God put that different in my heart.
So it didn't become about you anymore.
Right.
It became about
Absolutely.
what God wanted you to do.
Absolutely.
I think for some of you that are listening, and I really want you to really lean in your heart to what Elizabeth is saying. Because when Jesus comes in, as she put it, the lights come on.
Lights come on.
And we start to see things that we didn't see before. And this thing called selfishness,
Right.
we become aware of it, and it moves away from us, and we start to take responsibility.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so now things have changed. So what happens in the home? What about your relationship with your husband now? How do you deal with this?
Well, it was really, really a uphill, downhill journey with him. My husband didn't stop his addiction, but I held on to the Lord because that's the love that I found with God that night. I wanted to hold on to that.
So you stayed in the marriage.
I stayed in the marriage because I believe in marriage. I believe in marriage. I believe that that's what I was supposed to do. And I tried to hold on as tight as I could. I fought. I prayed. I prayed and I fought. And my husband, he was getting really, really agitated with me because I would not give up.
Yeah.
I would not give up God. I did not give up God. And I told him, I said, you do what you got to do, but there's got to be somebody, sound mind, to raise our children. Our children must be raised upright. And my husband, he kept on with his addiction, and it got worse and worse and worse. But I held on to the Lord.
Was that a crack addiction?
It was a crack addiction. First, it was a weed addiction. Don't let people tell you smoking weed won't hurt you. There are weed that they do give for cancer patients, and I understand that. But that is a gateway. It really is.
Yes,
it's a gateway. Because when he started doing the weed, it became a crack. And then it became alcohol. And it got worse. It can become cursing, anger, so much. And it did. It got to that point. After 30 years, well, I'll say 25 years, we finally split. Yeah.
Okay. Because of the
addiction.
The abuse and the addiction.
And the abuse.
And everything that was going
Right.
on. So what happens then?
Well, after 25 years, I kept praying and I was talking to God. And I said, Lord, now after 25 years, I have prayed and I've asked you to change my marriage after 25 years. And I said, Lord, if he's not going to change now, he's never going to change. So we split up. And we stayed apart for 6 years. But I want you to know, after 6 years, my husband my daughter called me one day. I was at work trying to provide, make a living for my children, putting them through school, putting them through college.
Yeah.
I put 4 of my children through college. God and I did that.
Yeah.
And every last one of them have a degree.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
yes, and I'm on my job working. My daughter called me. My baby girl said, Mom, you need to come to the hospital. I said, honey, I can't come. She said, you need to come to the hospital. Dad is sick. And I'm thinking, now I have spent 25 years trying to help my husband, and I cannot afford to get off from work.
Right.
I cannot afford to lose my job because I need it. I'm the only sole survivor for me and them. And so she said, Mom, this is different this time. You really need to come. So I go and I tell my supervisor, I have to go to the hospital. My husband is sick. I get to the hospital, and the doctor, his mother is there, my daughter is there, and the doctor's there.
Pause for a second. You were separated but not divorced, is that right?
Not divorced.
Okay. Because you keep saying my husband, and that's
Right.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
I believed because remember, when I was 9 years old, when I was younger, all I wanted was to be a wife
Yeah.
and a mother to my children. And God let me do that. Now, the enemy had me on the wrong track at first, but God put me on the right track. And the doctor says to me, I need to talk to you. And he said, your husband is sick with cancer, colon cancer. He has the size of a tumor in his colon that is the size of a baseball. And he's in 4th stage. So I didn't understand cancer that much, but all I know that he was sick. And my mother-in-law, she said, Elizabeth, I guess I'll take him home because we're separated, you know.
Yeah.
She said, I guess I'll take him home. And the Lord spoke in my heart, just in that instant, said, no, you take him home. And, you know. And
Was that shocking to you?
That was shocking to me.
Yeah.
Shocking to me. I'm like, what people going to think this? Because the world knew what he had done and what all the women that he had had in his life, the world knew it. And God spoke to my heart, said, you're going to take him home. And I looked at him, I said, honey, still calling him honey, I'm going to take you home. He looked shocked at himself. He said, you going to take me home? I said, yes, I'm going to take you home. I am going to take you back home. I said, you are my husband. I married you. You married me. And if anybody going to take care of you, it's going to be your wife. And I promise you, those are the words I told him. And he said, okay. He said, okay. He said, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I want you guys to know that he lived 2 years after that. My husband asked me to forgive him. He asked the children to forgive him. And the last 2 years of his life was the best 2 years of all the 25 years, the 30 years we had together.
And he came to know the Lord.
He became to know the Lord.
Wow.
Yes, he did.
Let's talk about this forgiveness thing for a minute, because somebody like you, and there are many who have been through difficult circumstances, and I'll never forgive him, or I'll never forgive her.
Absolutely.
How important is this thing called forgiveness?
Forgiveness is so important. When you think that you have had enough and you cannot forgive, forgiveness is like cancer itself. Unforgiveness, let me say it right. Unforgiveness is like cancer itself. When you forgive a person, you release yourself. And when I took my husband home, my heart was so full. I mean, I just knew that's what I had to do. That's what I don't even have time to tell you all the experiences he put me through. But when I forgave him and brought him home, the last 2 years of our life was the best of all the years that we was married. Of all the years that we was married. And God put peace in our heart. God even gave me greater love for him. Because I was like, sit at work when I was trying to work, go back to work. He was home. He couldn't work anymore because he had the cancer. I would sit at my sewing machine and cry for him because I know he was home sick. God gave me greater love for him. Greater love for him. And forgiveness, you can forgive. Because look, greater love has no man than this, that a man will lay down his life for his friend. Jesus died for us, and did we deserve it?
Right, not at all.
He forgave us of all the things that we done, and we did not deserve it. And you can forgive. You can forgive. God will give you forgiveness, and that's what he gave me.
So he lives for another 2 years.
He lives for another 2 years.
And then he passes away.
Yes.
You're working still.
Yes.
Your kids are now grown.
Right.
How do you make the transition into pastoring?
Well, in the process of time and all going through all what I was going through, I was pastoring probably about 10 years before he got sick.
Okay.
Yes. And when I first, wait a minute, now let me get it right. I was preaching, not pastoring.
Right.
I wasn't pastoring. I was preaching,
Yep.
just preaching God's word. I started pastoring about, it's so much been happening in my life. I want to get the part right, because he died about a year after I became pastoring.
Okay.
About a year after. And how did I? He was my first deacon in my first church. I've have 2 churches.
Yep.
And the first church we had, he was my first deacon. Yeah, he was coming to the Lord then. But yeah, the Lord had called my life, called me to pastor. I was at the age of about 18. I knew then in my life, when the Lord changed me earlier, I knew that I would be a pastor. The Lord already told me that, and that is a true statement. I knew that God told me what he was going to do in my life. So I knew pastoring was in my life. But yeah, about a year before he passed, he came into the church and made himself my first deacon.
So you've been pastoring now about 15 years.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
And you're pastoring at Bible Way number 7 Church, right?
Bible Way number 7.
Up in East Newton.
East Newton. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk for a minute about East Newton. Because I know that you've got a real heart
Yes, I do.
for that part of the city.
Yes.
And what do you see as some of the greatest challenges and needs that you would like to see changed, things that would be different?
Well, on the east side of Newton, I would love to see a change, because when I was a little girl, that side of town was really prosperous.
Did you grow up in East Newton?
I did grow up in East Newton, and did not even know that I would be the pastor of one of those churches on that side. But the town was prospering, and we had people that was more sound in the mind, and there was more older people, and most of the people there that was older at that time, they have passed on. And the people that's now there, that is my generation, don't have the care. I would like to see the love come back for the city, for that side of town. The love in the people's heart come back to that side of the town so we can build it up. It needs to be built up. It needs to be cared for. It needs love there. We have so many houses that have gone to ruins, that are empty. There's too many people living outside on the street that need to be living in these houses. We have so many homeless people that needs place to stay, and the houses need to be renovated. Life just needs to come back on that side of the town. We need life on that side of the town. We really do.
There's a story in the Bible of a man named Nehemiah.
Right.
And one day, he's the cupbearer to the king.
Right.
Which is basically the man, most trusted man, because he's tasting and eating all the food because of assassination attempt might have happened on the king.
Yes.
Nehemiah gets it. He's
exactly.
there.
Exactly.
And he is in the presence of the king. He's living in a palace.
Yes.
He is well off.
Right.
And one day, some of his friends come back from Jerusalem.
Yes.
He says, "How's things going?" Simple question. And they said, "Things aren't going at all well." That will put Nehemiah on a journey.
Right.
That totally shifted and changed his life. And when he goes in before the king, and this is one of the things that I've thought about over and over again, he doesn't say to the king, I wish that you could fix this little issue for me, or I wish you could help my family here. The statement that Nehemiah makes, he says, "I want to go rebuild a city."
Yes.
We have such a big God, and we're asking God for such small things.
Right.
And Nehemiah says, I want to rebuild the city.
Right.
And of course, that was a Persian king at that time, but we have a king called the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.
Amen.
Why not go before our king
Right.
and ask him to do something so big
Right.
that if it happened, nobody could look at us and say it was because of who we were?
Right. Right.
And so, what about the rebuilding of a city? Because I think that's where your heart is at.
That's exactly where my heart is. I want to rebuild the city. The city on the east side, I want to rebuild that. It needs to be rebuilt because we have a lot of things have gone to ruins. Houses that needs to be renovated, as I said, not just the houses, lives over there.
Sure.
There's lives over there that needs to be renovated. You know, without the Lord building the house, you know, the labor is in vain. We need the Lord. We really do need the Lord to help us to rebuild the east side.
So you're right in the middle of the east side, your
Yes.
church is. So tell us a little bit about your church. You've been in this church for how long?
I've been in this church for about approximately 4 years.
4 years, okay.
Yes.
And I was honored to be there, first time there,
Yes.
of 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Yes.
to a community meeting.
Right.
And that was interesting because it wasn't a church service. It was a community meeting where
Yes.
people came in and shared their heart,
They did.
their concerns for the
Yes.
area.
Yes.
And do you do service on Saturdays? Regular service?
our
Tuesdays and
regular-
Saturdays, is that right?
Our regular service, worship service is Saturday morning, starts at 10:30. And Bible study starts at 10:30 and worship starts at 11. And our prayer service is on Tuesday,
Tuesdays.
starts at 6:30.
Okay.
And then there are times we do have Sunday morning worship or Sunday morning services.
And you have just been living among the people over there, and we honor you for that.
God bless you. I thank God. It's an honor from God for me, you know.
Because you're in a place right now in a community that is Latino,
Right.
African American,
Correct.
that need somebody like you
Well,
that will just love on people
yes.
and care for people.
Yes.
And you and I both know that sometimes pastoring and people is a challenge.
Very much a challenge. Yes, it is.
So, as individuals are watching today, and we're going to pray here in a moment,
All right.
if you could say to those individuals, and if you want to, just look into that camera over there
Okay.
and say, here's what I really need you to help me with.
Okay.
Here's what I need you to pray about, and here's what I need you to help me with. What would you say?
I want you to help me to pray that God would just come into on the east side of that town. And I mean, everywhere. I'm not trying to be selfish, but I'm working on that side. My heart goes out on that side that the city would be rebuilt, that the city would be renovated, that the people would know that there is a God, that there's a God that we can pray to, a God that we can talk to, that a God that will change things in our lives. God is still God. God is still on the throne. All hope is not lost. God is still there. We need each other. I need you and you need me. We need each other, but we mostly definitely need the Lord. You know, if we could just trust one another, because our doors are open and everyone is welcome. We want people to feel welcome and feel that you are loved. I needed that love in my life. And I know if you need love, you can come to any of the churches there. And God, He'll give you that love you need. He'll give you the hope that you need. I just thank and praise God for Pastor Mark here.
You know, sometimes there is a trust issue, isn't there?
It is.
Why do you think it's like that?
Well, we know it's the enemy. The devil don't want us to trust, you know. And some people say, well, you know, I don't trust. I've been hurt before.
Sure.
I've been hurt before. I've been hurt before too.
We all have.
Yes. But God wants us to know, and He wants us to realize He's still there. Yes, we've been hurt. Yes, we've been whatever. But still, God is still God, and He's still on the throne. And if you can ask God whatever you will, and God will open up that door. He'll make that way for you. We do have to trust Him. We must trust Him. Pastor Mark, we've got to trust.
We do. And to
Yes.
those of you watching today, I want to talk to you just for a moment about the rebuilding of cities. Because it's not just East Newton. It's not just a part of Hickory.
Yes, not just
It's
that.
not just a part of Charlotte
Right,
or New York City or Portland, Oregon,
right.
or places in Minnesota or Chicago or some of the challenging areas that we have around the country right now. There are many places that God wants to see rebuilt.
Yes,
And we're not just talking here about the physical rebuilding of it, although that's important.
Right.
We're talking about the rebuilding of lives.
yes,
And God, and for some of you watching right now, you have resources.
right.
You have resources that you can put into a city, maybe through a church, and become, as the scripture says, the rebuilder of cities.
Yes,
The person that builds up the old waste places. And you know,
Yes.
sometimes, Elizabeth, we just drive by places in our cities and we say, oh, that's just an old part of the city. It'll never change. It'll be that way forever. I don't think it has to be that way.
it don't have to be that way.
And there are people watching today that have the ability to make a difference. I'm asking you
Yes,
that are watching to make a difference.
make a difference.
Make a difference with the resources that you have. Make a difference with your presence
Yes.
in a place. Make a difference with what God would want you to do in a city. Because God has called us. He cares about the cities of this nation.
Yes, He does.
He cares about the cities
Yes,
of
He
this
does.
world.
Yes, He does.
And we don't just want to sit in the four walls of our church and ignore what's going on
That's
beyond
exactly
the four
right.
walls. We cannot do that. Elizabeth,
Cannot
we've
afford
got
it.
to stop doing that.
Yes, we do.
There's a world out there
There is a world.
that needs us to get outside
Yes,
of the four walls
that is so true.
and do something. And I want to challenge those of you watching to do something. Now, Elizabeth, every month there's a community meeting at your
Yes.
church.
Yes, it is.
Is that the third,
That's the second Thursday.
second Thursday?
The second Thursday in every month.
Every month.
The
The
second
second
Thursday.
Thursday at Bible Way number
Number
7.
seven.
Church. And what street is that?
That is on Irvin Avenue,
Irvin Avenue.
South Irvin Avenue.
I want to challenge you on the second Thursday of each month to come to this community meeting. I did my
Yes.
first one a few weeks ago, and it was very enlightening to
Yes.
me. I learned so much there,
Yes,
Elizabeth.
yes.
I really did.
Yes,
As I just
absolutely.
sat back and listened to people and listened to their hearts.
Yes, they have.
And oftentimes the community leaders are there too, aren't they?
Right.
The city council
The
and
city
other individuals?
council, the police, the chief of police, the city councilmen, all the people that work in the areas in the offices of for the regulation of the city.
Yeah.
They are there.
I believe that God is calling people to help rebuild cities.
Yes,
And particularly in light of this whole COVID event that has happened.
I know.
It's all around the world, and you and I were talking, if it would just been America, okay, but this is all around the world.
It's all around.
I believe God wants something to shift,
He does.
something to change.
Yes, He does. I believe that.
And I believe that He wants to send spiritual awakening
Absolutely.
to this world
Absolutely.
on a level that we have never known,
Amen.
seen, or experienced before.
I believe that too, Pastor Mark.
I believe that.
I believe
I'm believing for Newton, North Carolina,
Me too.
for
I'm
the
with
presence of God to
you.
descend,
Yes.
and for the tangible
Lord.
result of that to be
Yes.
changed lives,
Yes.
rebuilt buildings, paved streets.
Yes.
I mean, this is a practical side of this.
Yes, it is. Yes,
with
it is.
changed lives, and I believe that that's going to happen. I really do.
I do. I believe it. I believe that with you. I really do.
Well, Pastor Elizabeth, we honor you today.
I thank
Really.
God. Thank God for you all.
And thank you for pastoring in this city. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
We really do. We're going to put your information up
Okay.
on the screen so people know where you're located
Okay.
at. And I want to thank those of you for being with us today. I'm Mark Ivy, the host of Midweek Talks, and There's really a lot that you can do to make a difference in the lives of other people. And I challenge you to share this story of Elizabeth, because there are many people that are walking through similar circumstances.
That's so true.
Of struggle and issues. And God can come in.
God can come in.
And He can change everything.
He can do it.
We're believing for you.
Yes.
Trusting God for you. Thank you for being with us today on Midweek Talks.